Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. If you have not done so already, what are you waiting for? Join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group today and get the inside scoop on all things BYU that I'm hearing coming to your phone in the form of a text message. Just $5 a month to join the Insiders Group. And more importantly, you get 2 full weeks of a free trial when you sign up today to see if it's the right option for you. So join us. The link is in the show notes. Whether you're watching this or listening to it, or reach out to me on social media, we'll get you taken care of. But join the Locked On Cougars Insider Group today. All right, before we go on today's show, spring camp starts this week. And the big question mark around BYU's wide receiver group is who's going to step up? And what do I mean by that? Well, Chase Roberts injured his shoulder in that bowl win, and he is more than likely going to miss spring camp. Even if he were healthy, I would venture a guess that Chase would have taken very little live action reps because you just don't want to risk him in spring camp. The other side of it is Darius Lassiter's status still remains murky. Now, on Cougar Sports Saturday with Mitch Harper and Matt Biomonte on KSL News Radio, Fesi Sitake joined them this past Saturday and said, essentially, and kind of alluded to the fact that BYU is not going to have Darius Lassiter. I have been telling our insiders group for some time there's been doubt about Darius's status with regards to that JUCO waiver. Now, Darius was a guy who had to petition to get last year back alone, had to sit out the first game of the year, as many of you might recall. And it sure looks like at this point, I wouldn't be betting, much like apparently Fesi's not betting, that Darius will be part of BYU football in 2025. So without your top two guys from this past season, what does the wide receiver core got to show in spring camp? Well, I want to see who's going to step up. Is it a JoJo Phillips? Is it Cody Hagan ready to break out after suffering an injury late in the season? Can he finally get back on the field? Could a guy like Parker Kingston take his absolutely incredible return skills, but become a more well-rounded wide receiver and find himself with extra reps in that wide receiver core? Could a guy like Tei Nakua break out? There is a lot of talent in that wide receiving core, and Fesi Sitake has absolutely done an incredible job bringing in talent, but more importantly, keeping that talent in the program. Referencing back to that interview that he did with Cougar Sports Saturday, he talked about what guys like JoJo Phillips have meant to this program. He said they have bought into the vision we have in this program. Too many guys are way too quick to hit the transfer portal when they feel like, hey, I'm not going to have a chance to play early on in my career. And they hit the transfer portal, and you say, okay, well, thanks for coming, but they don't really build much of a rapport with anybody, and they're off to their next adventure. The nice part is you could look at BYU's roster of wide receivers. Now, you lose Kody Epps, you lose Darius Lassiter most likely, but then Keelan Marion, an All-American returner, much like Parker Kingston. Can Keelan step into a more prominent role this spring? Can he make himself maybe that de facto number 2 behind Chase Roberts? I've already talked about JoJo Phillips. He's got the size, 6'5", 205 pounds that you want. Prototypical size, got very good speed. Can he emerge and make that position his own opposite Chase Roberts? But I can go down this list and make an argument for every one of these guys to have an opportunity in spring camp to really show out. Dominique McKenzie, true burner with his speed. Can he finally have shown that, hey, the mission rust, it's gone, and he's capable of contributing at a high level? There is every ability and every type of skill set you want in this wide receiver room. I'm curious to see how BYU approaches spring camp with this group and who ultimately emerges in spring. As a media core, I'm expecting that we'll have maybe observation once, maybe twice a week for 15 to 20 minutes. So we'll get a snapshot look at what to expect from BYU's wide receiver core, but more importantly, the overall roster. But I look at this and say, hey, there is a lot for all of these guys on this roster to show. Even a guy like Chase Roberts, even though he's likely to be on the shelf playing more of a coaching role, well, I've had enough players tell me that when you kind of morph into that coaching role where you're coaching up the younger players and trying to kind of share your insight, what you've learned, some tricks of the trade, as it were, to help these young players be better football players, you become a better player because you kind of understand things at a deeper level. Connor Pay, our good friend here on the podcast, I do need to get him back on the show here soon to catch up with him and talk about his progress via his NFL training. But he talked when he sat out for was it 5 weeks this past season, how he became a much better player just mentally. He understood concepts and understood what the overall scheme of BYU's offense were than at any point, maybe during the time he'd been playing for BYU in the, I don't know, he'd make 50 career starts, whatever he made at BYU. it forces your mind to change and you understand things at a deeper level. And that is the opportunity that Chase Roberts has in spring camp here to really start to understand what he's doing and what he's doing as a leader for this BYU wide receiver core. But then the other guys, they're actually on the field. They have to go out and ball out. They have to obviously build a rapport with Jake Retzloff, understand what he likes as a quarterback, where he likes to put the ball, when it comes to scramble situations, where he wants you to be, finding holes in the zone, that type of stuff. All of that is important to establish in spring ball. And even with the backup quarterback, speaking of McKay Hillstead and Trayson Bourget, most notably, they have to go out there and show that they can catch passes no matter where they're thrown, when they're thrown, and prove to be a reliable option. That's the number one thing that quarterbacks most notably want is they want proven guys who can go out and no matter what the down and distance, no matter what the time on the clock is, the pressure-packed moments or the blowouts where it's really kind of loosey-goosey, they want guys who can lock in and make plays. And that's what this younger core of wide receivers for BYU, they have to go out and show that. I'm excited because, like I said, Fesi Sitake, he has stacked a lot of talent in his position group, and there's every type of skill set. You got burners, you got big-bodied guys, you got pseudo tight ends who can really post up, you got guys who can jump out of the gym like a JoJo Phillips on jump ball situations. You've got everything you could want as a wide receiver coach, and that extends to BYU offensive coordinator Aaron Roderick. He's got to be looking at this saying, I've got this whole group of toys, to use that expression, about these wide receivers. Let's see how many different facets we can use them in. And this is the time to do trial and error. If you want to try a new scheme in practice, spring camp is when you do that. When it comes to the fall training camp leading into the actual season, you have to have already buckled down on, okay, here's what our core concepts are. Here's what our core schemes are. But if you probably notice something, a wrinkle you'd like to add, well, you try it out in spring camp. If it sticks, guess what? It becomes part of the playbook. If it doesn't, you wad it up, toss it in the trash, and say, hey, we tried it. And that's what I'm looking for from this wide receiver core is who of these guys can adapt best in these circumstances that BYU's coaches will undoubtedly put them in, down in distance, like you have to go the length of the field for a game-winning field goal. Who's going to come up with critical catches? Who will get themselves open against the zone? Who is the best against man-press cover that we will inevitably see coming from Gennaro Guilford and Jay Hill's defense? That is what BYU's wide receiver core has got to show. And with their top two guys in Chase Roberts and Darius Lassiter out, there's a whole lot of opportunity for the rest of the wide receiver core to stake claim that, hey, I'm him. I've got next. That's what you want to see from this group as they move forward. And should be a very, very entertaining spring because I, for one, am looking forward to seeing how they all perform out there on the field. All right, that is going to do it for this Monday edition of the show. Once again, I hope you had a fantastic weekend. If you wouldn't mind doing so, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you're watching this on YouTube, a lot of you guys, probably your first timers, there's a little bell notification icon. There's a subscribe button. Hit that, enable notifications so you know when a new episode drops and you can be with us every single day because we got daily coverage of the Cougars coming up. So if you want insight on BYU basketball heading into the stretch run here ahead of the Big 12 tournament and March Madness, we got that. We'll also have BYU football and spring camp covered from top to bottom as well and everything in between. So as always, thank you for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Appreciate all of your guys' patronage. And once again, as always, thank you for being everydayers with us right here on the Locked On Cougars podcast.